I knew from the get-go that we wanted to make a film that was, I like to say, where you come in late and you get out early. We kind of throw the audience on this ride of zigs and zags, and you don't really know where it's going. And it ends in a very hard place, but a place of leaving the audience, thinking.
Hey folks, Brian Smith here with Dream Path Podcast, where we get inside the heads of talented creatives from all over the world. Today we talk to writer, producer, and director Josef Kubota Wladyka. Joseph's most recent feature film is Catch the Fair One, which was released to theaters and VOD on February 11th by IFC FIlms. The film stars Kali Reis, who plays a former boxer who goes on a quest to find her sister in the underground criminal world of sex trafficking. And Kali herself is a boxer in real life, a world-class boxer, and that's how Josef and Kali met. And over the course of several years, they developed this story together. And that's one of the things we talk about in this interview with Josef, is how this movie came together. And it's an incredible organic story of a passion project that two people spent so much time working on together. And you can really tell when you're watching the film that they put a lot of thought into the plot and the story logic, and the casting is fantastic. There's a lot of great character actors that agreed to do this film, probably for not much money because it's a fairly low budget film. And Josef did a fantastic job directing it. It is a very taut thriller, very efficient, comes in at about an hour and 25 minutes, hour and 30 minutes. And it's a really, really well done film. In this interview, I talked to Josef, of course, about Catch the Fair One and about his relationship with Kali over the course of the 5 years that it took to bring this film to the big screen. But we also talked about how he was hired to become the first American director of the Netflix series Narcos, and how he balances his need to make a living by doing episodic television directing with his passion for making indie films. And we talk a little bit about film school, and he just shares some wisdom that was incredible about the creative process and about social media and strategies that he uses to stay focused on being creative in an environment where we're being pulled in many different directions. We also do a deep dive on the filmmaking process for Catch the Fair One and the choices that he made in terms of exposition or lack thereof, and specific scenes that I asked him about in the very last scene or the very last frame of the movie, which we managed to talk about in a way that did not reveal any spoilers. So you can watch this interview start to finish without having spoiled any parts of this film, Catch the Fair One. So go check it out on VOD or in theaters if it's in your town. And without further ado, let's jump into my chat with Josef Kubota Wladyka. Josef Wladyka, welcome to Dream Path Podcast.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you so much for having me. It's a great honor. And I'm really happy to be here.
Excellent. Well, we've got a lot of things to talk about. Your filmography is fascinating. And I did watch a great interview with you on an indie film podcast that was on YouTube. And so I learned a lot about you already going into this. So hopefully I don't make you repeat yourself too much. But, Catch the Fair One is coming out shortly. When is that going to be released?
It comes out this Friday, February 11th. It's going to be playing in some theaters across the country and on VOD platforms the same day. So it's all released on the same day through IFC FIlms.
Excellent. IFC is picking up a lot of great films this year.
Yeah, it's been amazing working with them. I've really, really enjoyed working with them, and it's a great badge of honor, I feel like, because there's been so many incredible films that have been IFC films. And for me, I've been in New Yorker 15 years now. I've been there 50, so I guess I can call myself a New Yorker.
Right on.
And when I was in film school, I went to NYU grad film, so we would just walk down 6th Ave, and I remember just always looking up at the marquee, what's playing, let's go in and watch, in between classes, and to have a film there. It's a long time coming, but it's a great honor, and I'm very happy about it.
That's fantastic. I watched this film without knowing how it came together. and how you found the story and developed it. And as I was watching it, I was just really struck by how tight the film is. This is an extremely well-made film in terms of story logic, plot holes or lack thereof. I was like, wow, like an hour and 25 minutes, an hour and a half or so. And you just told this really tight story. But I think a less skilled filmmaker and someone who maybe came at it less organically than you did, would be a 2-hour film or a 2.5-hour film. So my guess is you had to make some really tough choices.
Yeah, so, that's a great observation. I mean, it's a lot of it comes out of sort of practical necessity in a sense of we're independent film and these types of films are really hard to make. So I knew from the get-go, and working with Kali kind of as we were kind of figuring out the story and everything, that we wanted to make a film that was, I like to say, where you come in late and you get out early. We kind of throw the audience on this ride of zigs and zags, and you don't really know where it's going. And it ends in a very hard place, but a place of leaving the audience, thinking. And sort of that was always like the structure that we were working with in the parameters we put on ourselves. I always, I am very much drawn to films that there's not a lot of exposition, it kind of just starts and you're kind of just dropped in the film, and it just, the audience is sort of they're leaning in as it's taking place. And some of the filmmakers, some of my favorite filmmakers are the Darden brothers, the Belgian filmmaking duo, who I just have such a great appreciation for their films, because they're very much that, all the plot is driven by the behavior of the characters, and it really, it starts and it goes, and everything is, the exposition is the action, Exactly. And so me and Kali kind of like working on this film, we kind of made that pact very early on, and also in the sense of there's so much, we collaborated on the story basically for 2 years, and in that 2 years it was a process of preparing and getting ready for her to act in it, but also the things that we were learning about the topic and the issue was touching on, and what she was learning on the grassroots ground level, and kind of sharing it with each other. But there's just so much there, and it's so complex. And we wanted to sort of whittle it down to sort of a very simple idea, and all the feelings of regret and loss and rage and all that. We wanted to put it all on the shoulders of just this one character, this one warrior that we created, and kind of take an audience through that story.
I'm glad that you mentioned the exposition and the paradigm that you approach the film with on exposition, because when I look back on it, I see just a couple of scenes there that are expository, if that's a word. But they're so efficient, like where Kali's with Kimberly Guerrero's character, and it's establishing, it's the setup for their relationship, and provides a lot of motivation or explanation for Kali's motivation, right? Yep. And why she's driven to do what she does. But it just seems like the effort and skill that went into writing those scenes is someone who has a lot more years in the industry than you have. So you really have an impressive work product here in terms of like just great storytelling, but done really efficiently. So well done.
Okay. Well, I'll take that that compliment. That's very kind. I mean, I feel I've only made 2 films. I've done like 16 hours of episodic television directing, which obviously there's so much experience that you gain from that obviously helped me make this film as well. It's all a rolling thing, and I still feel like I'm still learning, and I still don't know what I'm doing. And that's the beautiful thing of the journey of being a filmmaker. There's just, 1, there's no right or wrong way to do it, and 2, it's never ending, the different problems and stuff that you learn as you go along and you continue to make films. Mm-hmm. And in that particular scene, when me and Kali, there was many different versions of that scene, like on the page, and that was one that we really kind of rehearsed a lot, and I worked a lot before we were shooting, and we would change it and rework it and rewrite it, and but it really wasn't until Kimberly came on and we kind of talked about it a little, and then we're shooting it. And I have to give all the credit to Kimberly. She's such a giving actor that, she really kind of was on the other end of it, kind of giving a lot of stuff to Kali to react to. And the lines, some lines are there, but also it was more like I just wanted them to try to kind of really just get in it a little bit, and just kind of find what was happening in the actual moment. And that's what ended up being there. But it was through building a lot of trust with Kali to kind of know that she can access that vulnerability. But it's funny because a lot of people point to that scene because really after that scene, many people who have watched the film say that it's sort of like you just smash on the gas pedal and it just goes, Right. So I guess it's like the set it off scene, it's such a pivotal scene. And it's one, when you're looking at your schedule of 20 days and you particularly make sure that one's in the right place, that you don't shoot too much stuff on that day, even though you don't have any time. So you're still going to shoot like 4 other scenes that day. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, the thing I really appreciate about scenes like that is the facial expression on a great actor like Kimberly, where she's being told something that's like a hard truth that Kali feels.
Yeah.
And you can tell that when I say a hard truth, I mean, it's probably a little piece of her, Kimberly's character, Jaya, feels that, but doesn't want to admit it. So she doesn't say anything. And
yeah. And then again, it's you're exactly what you're saying. Like the whole idea of us when we were like constructing the script in a way was, how do you just kind of show it all of what the relationship is and what the damage of having someone from the family be gone? How do you just show that all in just this little like sit down, and just really show like the complications of that relationship? And I think hopefully we did it, I'm sure there's ways that it could have been better, but
right. Who was your editor on this?
The editor was Ben Rodriguez Jr. He's a very, very good friend of mine. We went to film school together at NYU Grad Film. We were in the same class, along with my 2 producers, fantastic, amazing producers, Mollye Asher and Kimberly Parker, also in the same year of film school. So for me, on my first film, I worked with people from my class. It's always that dream to collaborate with and come up with your classmates, and sometimes it's romanticized, sometimes it's not a reality that you can do. Like, obviously, when I'm a episodic television director on a TV show, I can't bring anyone with me usually. And so on. So although I did get Ben hired on this HBO show that I just shot in Japan, and he was the editor on it. And it was so, it was just beautiful because usually when you go in to do a television show, you don't know anyone, you know what I mean? And the editing is really intense because you have like 4 days per episode and for our film, we had months to edit it, but to already have that shorthand with him was like, so it was just great. It was amazing. Very talented editor. He edits a lot of Paul Schrader's films. So he edited The Card Counter that just came out recently. He edited First Reformed. So really talented guy. I mean, we bicker and fight like a married couple all the time. We really kind of, but what's great about it is because we like know each other. There's no, we can be so honest.
Yeah.
And I will say we finished shooting in 2019, right before the pandemic. So we weren't really starting post until 2020. So we had about maybe like a month and a half of editing, in Lost Planet in Soho, because he's a resident editor there, and they allowed us to edit there. Big shout out to them. But then the pandemic happened, and it all went remote. And right. Finishing a movie all in post over Zooms and stuff is a very, it's not the same. It's not the same as being in person with someone and going for a walk and getting up and walking around and
well. One more geek question about editing before we switch to the origin of this story and how you found it. What was the longest length of this film where you were like, okay, it's done, we've edited it, and this is how long it is versus where it is now? Like, was there a 2-hour version of this film where you're like, it's good, but it needs to be tighter?
I mean, as in any, I mean, the film was never really that long because on the page it was very tight, going back to, for all the reasons about how we wanted to design the story and how to tell the story, but also, we didn't want more pages or more days of working for more days of shooting that we don't have the money for. So,
right.
So it was never really a long film. I mean, certainly the first assembly, it was probably like, I don't know, probably my guess was like, maybe 95 minutes or something like that. And as a director, I believe Scorsese said this, but like, if you look at your first assembly of a film and you're not sick, then something's wrong. And it's so true. Like, it is so painful to watch that first cut. It is just like, you want to like jump out a window. It's so painful.
Where does the pain come from? Like, what is the source of that?
Well, number one, it's never going to be, first of all, it's not hitting on all cylinders. You know what I mean? So I think that it takes a long time to, I think more experienced filmmakers can look at it and understand what they're looking at more. But I remember on my first feature film, but it was my first time going through it. I was so like, oh my God, this is
Manos Sucios, right?
Yeah. I completely failed. Like, this is really bad. But it's supposed to be kind of bad. You know what I mean? And then you look at what's there, you look at its strengths, and then you start dialing that in and working it. And then, it doesn't have obviously all the score and the sound design and the mix and all that stuff kind of, adds to it as you're kind of whittling it down to what the essence of what the final cut is going to be. So it was a little bit longer, but then, after, the typical like screenings and showing people and all that stuff, you start to get the feedback, which is also all very painful. It's my least favorite part. I love editing. I love just me and one other person in a room. That part's great. But then when you got to start showing people and stuff, it's just. Are
you watching them as they're watching it, or how do you?
Ben loves doing that. He loves sitting in the back. I don't know. I've learned to put certain boundaries up for my own like mental sanity. And I think it depends. Like, sometimes I just won't sit. I'll just go for a walk and then come back and then get the reactions, because it's just hard. I mean, this film in particular was a 5-year journey. They take so long to make, and I'm really hard on myself. I'm really, really hard on myself. Like, I could talk to you for an hour about everything I don't like about the film. I'm not going to do that, but I think it's part of my Japanese, striving for perfections, OCD side of me,
That's great. Well, let's talk about the origin story of this film, because it's really special. I know it because I've heard other interviews with you talking about it, but I think my listeners would really appreciate knowing how you found this story and how you developed it and how it ended up on film.
Yeah. I mean, obviously I've told this story so much, but I mean, I think so in 2017, really what's kind of interesting about it is the sweet science of boxing is sort of what brought me and Kali together. That's sort of how I found her, because I myself was getting really into boxing, and I found her through like a friend's boxing gym. I was immediately just drawn to her because, I mean, she's a legit amazing world-class boxer. You know what I mean? Like,
you can tell in the film.
Yeah. As an athlete, I have so much respect for athletes, but also, what I respected about her so much is she was using her platform to speak out on things that she really cared about, and use it in her form of her own activism, to bring awareness to certain things. And at the time, I was learning more and more about the MMIW and people crisis in North America, and starting to just research that, and was so taken aback by it because it was something that was so overlooked. And I know it's something that she was speaking out on and talking about. So I was like, you know what? There's something in my mind germinating. I have an idea, but let me meet up with this person. Let me see if we vibe. Let me talk to her. And then also, there was just an inexplicable thing as a filmmaker. So I borrowed a camera and I drove up to Providence, and I had my little DSLR, and I just started interviewing her, and I just wanted to hang out with her and talk to her, and then talk about some of these things. And, I'm a filmmaker. This is how I work. I have a germinating idea in my mind, but I like real people. I get inspired by real people, and I try to make films that touch on that are genre films, but touch on something, a bigger conversation, sort of building off my first film. And, we immediately just, we were like brother and sister immediately. I don't know what it was. It's one of those inexplicable things, but I think it's the, being both OCD Virgos, being confused mixed kids, but there was this moment where because she's always in camp, she's always in training. I mean, this is the life of a boxer, and having hung out with her for 2 years and seeing the real dedication to that, I mean, it's a tough grind. But she was training for a fight, and she was going to her boxing gym to just hit the heavy bag and spar a little. And I was like, can I come? Can I watch? I gotta see this. I gotta see this power. What does it sound like when she hits that bag? And she goes, we're in this archetypical gym with all these world champion boxing, all these strong, powerful dudes, and it's just her. And she starts sparring with them. And it's just the inexplicable thing as a filmmaker, that image of her. I was like, okay, I don't know exactly what this movie is, but there's something here. And then, we started talking about the subject and what it was touching on. And I had a little ideas of different things, and we just hung out. I was like, let's just spend some time together. And then I also was wondering, curious in terms of like if she had any interest in acting and so on and so forth. So this is over the course of a long time. And what was really important to me, because she is such a strong voice, is I wanted to incorporate her into the story, into the collaborative process. And so we just kind of made this pact from very early on, like, let's try to go on this crazy journey, and it's going to be a roller coaster. So basically for like 2 years, like I was saying earlier, it was just a constant collaboration and a fluid whole thing, kind of creating the whole process. And for me, like, as an independent filmmaker, there comes a time where, you stop the creative writing process and all that, and then you have to turn into the car salesman, and like go and convince people to give you money to make this film and so on and so forth. And for me, that's always a really, really difficult time. You don't feel like a filmmaker. You don't feel like you're making anything. But what's great about working with Kali and working with a really real person is at any point I can grab my camera, I can grab an actor, and we can go and we can explore these scenes and rework these scenes and practice our acting and rewrite it and explore. And it makes me feel like I'm being the filmmaker in that long period where you're just still trying. You don't know if you're going to be able to make the film or not, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Gives you a little reprieve from the bullshit of
exactly,
focusing on money to, okay, now this is what it's all about. I'm a filmmaker. I'm not a fundraiser, but you're wearing many hats as an indie filmmaker. So
exactly. Exactly. It's all just part of the process. And there's some parts of it that you'll enjoy more, and there's some that you won't. But it's just being able to navigate all that, really,
So the 5-year process, during this 5-year process of developing, shooting, and rolling out the film, you're shooting Narcos in the meantime. I mean, you're doing episodic television. And we'll talk hopefully about that if we have time, because it's amazing that the origin story of that and how you found that project. But how is it that you can compartmentalize when you're working on like Narcos, a completely new endeavor for you intellectually and from a skill set standpoint, maintain the momentum of that project when you have to make a living as you're developing the story, right?
Yeah. I mean, exactly. That is something that is the number one struggle that I'm trying to figure out in terms of my first film, Manos Sucias. It took basically 6 years to make, if you include like start of idea to finally out, and this one's 5. And they're sort of your strange children that you gave birth to. But I'm constantly, as a filmmaker, it just takes so long. I mean, it's like I'm trying to figure out how to do it faster, but also, keep that spark of initial excitement when you want to make the film and you see it so clearly. And for me, when it starts to go off the rails is, you can't make a film by yourself. So you still have to start inviting people over for dinner and building the team out. And just speaking, honestly, like I had to do that during this film because, I had NYU grad film's a fantastic film program, but it's also an expensive film program, and I had all this debt. So it basically my whole career thus far has been juggling, going between those two. So going and shooting for, 3 months on a television show, and then coming back and getting back up with Kali and sort of building, the trust and all that. And on top of it, she's a world champion boxer, so she's training all the time. So I think that was honestly, one of the greatest challenges. And there were times where I wanted to give up on the project, and just not do it. But I think, me and Kali's hearts were in the right place, and we invested so much that you kind of find a way. And luckily, but it literally had to be me saying in 2019, there's no TV directing this year. We have to make the film this year. That's right. It, right. And I've saved up enough money so I can take that risk. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I think now I'm in a little bit of a different position. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to because I want to make more films, man. I want to make them faster, and I'm still trying to find my voice and my way and all this stuff, and I feel like the only way is by making films and failing and making mistakes and growing and learning, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
they take 5 years, each time.
Right. Well, I'm guessing that there's only so much bandwidth that any human being can maintain at any given time. And a 5-year track is just not a sustainable thing if that's the only thing you're doing.
Exactly.
So it sounds like you've got to straddle multiple worlds here. You've got episodic television to pay the bills, but also probably is personally fulfilling in ways that have nothing to do with money, because you're able to,
practice your craft.
Satisfy that need of just collaborating and getting shit done quick turnaround.
Yeah.
In and out. But also directing films that maybe you haven't developed, that you just are handed a script. And do you have those opportunities now where you have this film premiering and it's a great film? So are you getting opportunities now to direct other people's projects that have been developed substantially?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, of course. I mean, that was there even after my first film, Monosucias, to a certain extent. And absolutely, I think that directing television, it's a great practice of the muscle. You get to use, because all my films are I'm not going to say how much, but they're very low budget. They look like they're high budget, but I can assure you that there's not. Hold on.
New York City?
I'm in Philly. Me and Kali are together. She lives in Philly, and we just wanted, since it's our last week and our last hurrah of the release of the film, we just wanted to do all our press together, like next to each other. So we're not because when you do the Zooms, one after the other, it's very intense.
Right.
So at least we're next to each other, and there's the human interaction, and we can joke around in between. It just feels like the right way to bring the film home and out into the world. But what was I saying? I was saying, there's a lot of gifts in what you learn, especially when you're directing something that you didn't write, but there's also, it's tough because sometimes you kind of have to direct something that it just doesn't align with sort of your taste and tone, but you gotta do it because it's not your show. You know what I mean? Ultimately television, it's really the showrunner's vision in a way, and unless you're doing the pilot, you're sort of coming in there and sort of honoring what already has been established. You don't want to rustle the feathers too much. Of course, you want to try to put an imprint on it and elevate it and make it better and all those things. But you're also kind of, you're kind of like a substitute teacher in a way. But the skill set to learn how to shoot very quickly, is amazing. And then working with, because I had never worked with really experienced actors before. So learning what that's like and not building a years long relationship before I direct them. These are people that you just say, hey, nice to meet you. Okay. I guess we're going to do this scene. And you just get thrown into it, it's a great gift it sort of was a crash course in understanding how really experienced actors work, which was great.
Right.
But in terms of the films, a lot of scripts get sent to me. And, I've almost done some sort of bigger studio films, but I think I'm a little wiser now in the sense of, for me, myself, every individual artist's journey is different, but I get the sense that, I don't want to really step into that realm until I've built a little bit more of a body of work, and made some more films on my terms, so that when I do step into that world, people will actually listen to me. Because I'm very aware of, the stories. There's so many of them, of like a little tiny filmmaker that made their little indie darling at this festival, and they were catapulted to this ginormous film. And sometimes that works out amazing and great, and sometimes it's a total disaster. And I think for me, if I didn't write it, like I'm open to doing like an adaptation, but like I think I'm realizing, again, I'm still discovering this as I'm growing in my career, but I think I need to control the script, because I've gotten so many scripts. The scripts that come to me have sort of been already hodgepodged. I can just diagnose it and tell, okay, this was attached to this director and this director. They all did their own passes on it. And then this other person, and you get like this sort of like Frankenstein script, and you can tell immediately when you read it that there's no like singularity to it. And it's a film that they've been developing and trying to make for years and years and years. So I usually can kind of see that coming. That said, if a script came across my table and I absolutely I saw it and I clicked with it and I was like, I can do this, and I know I can do this really well, I'd probably do it. But that has not come. And I think and I don't know if that'll ever come.
Right. Well, I have a producer question for you. Darren Aronofsky is EP on this movie. Mm-hmm. And you also have some great character actors, Kevin Dunn, Daniel Henshaw, Kimberly Guerrero, of course, and Lisa Emery. So what comes first? Does Aaron come first? And because Aaron is Aaron, you can get these big name character actors to come in and be attached? Or is it the reverse? Or how did you cast this film?
Sure. Well, I mean, obviously having Darren and Protozoa on board is an amazing compliment. He's a legendary, iconic filmmaker. I love his films. The Wrestler is one of my all-time favorite films. But they came in a little bit later, when we're closer to shooting. And they basically got on board. It was one of those things where I was just having a general meeting with them. And they're like, well, what are you working on? And I'm like, oh, I have this film with it, but it's a professional fighter and I've been working on it for a year. You're not going to be interested in it. That's usually how I talk about it, because usually people aren't, but they're like, oh no, that sounds cool. And I think, so I sent, at this point, I try to build like the arsenal of stuff to show people. So a lookbook, the script, but then like I've been working with Kali to prove that she can act. I've been shooting scenes with her. Mm-hmm. And I think for Darren, I think it was once he saw Kali, it wasn't necessarily about the script but once he saw her and saw the power of her, right. I think he was on board.
He's like, this is a female Mickey Rourke.
Maybe.
No, not. But there are parallels though in the story between The Wrestler and
sure, yeah. But I'm glad you mentioned all those actors, because I think that they need to be shown a lot of love. You know what I mean? Like a film like this doesn't get made without them too. And they're taking a big risk coming on board to do this film with a professional fighter who's not a professional actor. They're taking a big leap of faith, and they're kind of what pushes it over the edge to get the film actually greenlit and made, Right. And so you always need you need that. And you need those stories. So really, there's always like certain moments in a film where like something happens and then it seems like, okay, things are really getting legit and moving forward. And I have to give a lot of props to Daniel Henshaw, because he was really the first actor to kind of come on board and say, I'll do this film. And again, it's not like that all came from a personal relationship, because he lives in Brooklyn, and one of my friends who's an actor kind of put us together, and we just became friends, like playing basketball and all this stuff. But in the back of my mind, I mean, I saw Snowtown Murders, and that his performance in that is literally, to me, it's one of the most incredible performances. I mean, it's terrifying, but one of the most incredible performances I've ever seen in my life. So I remember us meeting in the coffee shop, and I sent him the script and just to see if he would consider it, And he's a generous, lovely person. He was just like, let's do it. And then again, it's like, let's build this character. Let's really think. It was a collaboration. And once he came on board, that gives the confidence in other people to see, he's not like a super famous actor, but he's an amazing actor. And so that, helps bring confidence to bring those other people in. And I had a fantastic casting director in New York, Allison Swadziak, who was also helping with all this and helping us get to those people. So it was really, it was just, I guess, a lot of things falling into place. But again, I want to say how important it is for because they're not making a lot of money. I'll just be honest that They don't do this film because of the money. So them being a part of it, it's so important that actors do that and they don't have pride and be like, oh, I'm not the star. I'm not, because that was a lot of it in terms of trying to fill that role of Bobby. Like, oh, we need a huge star because that's going to give us the financing. And Daniel, he didn't care about any of that. You know what I mean? He saw the totality of what we were trying to do, and he was like, "I'm in." And as filmmakers, it's just it's a breath of fresh air to see that there are actors willing to do that.
Yeah, I thought it was great what Bobby brought, to the film for me was, he has this clean cut image, and it looks like a businessman, but he has this darkness and this evil lurking below the surface. But again, talking about exposition, it took one scene to understand why he would not give up the information that he was being asked to give. It was that the scene between him and his dad, where he gets, I'm not going to say too much about it, but there's one pivotal scene. And I think that's what's so brilliant about your style is you can just have one scene and it can be really short and it sets up so much and explains so much. And it gives you so much freedom to go to the next step in the story without having a plot hole.
Yeah. And, it's funny you mentioned that because I'm just trying to remember because, making a film, it's an army of people. And, I think a lot of times directors, they get all the credit and they shouldn't, or they get all the blame and maybe they necessarily shouldn't if a movie's bad. But what the thing you're particularly talking about, I have to, there's so many iterations and it's been so long and COVID brain fog, but I'm pretty sure that note that you just said actually came from my editor, Ben, as I was sharing the script with him early on. This is before we even shot it and everything. So there you go. You never, that's just, I guess, a way of saying like, it's great to have people around you that you trust and that will give you ideas and input in the creative process.
I'd like to ask you about a couple of other scenes, and I'm going to try not to give away anything in terms of spoilers. But there's some scenes, I guess, some devices in the film that I'm wondering if they were intentional. I assume they were, but there's the choke out scene at the beginning where she's, sparring and is getting choked out. And then there's another scene toward the end, a choke out scene. Yeah. But was that intentional as a screenwriter and as a filmmaker to sort of bookend those?
Absolutely. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. I mean, even to the way you can tell, like the setups and the shots and we're leading to sort of the same frame. So absolutely. Yeah. That was definitely intentional.
It's brilliant. I love it. And that's what's so fun. It's like, I don't know if you call those Easter eggs or what, but there's just like little payoffs in the movie that I really enjoyed. Another scene that that really resonated with me was when Kali was was with a bunch of sex trafficked victims, and there's this light coming down, and it seemed angelic, but were there, religious overtones that you were going for there? Like what, it was just a beautiful scene.
Yeah. It's so funny you mentioned that because like, I'm not a religious person at all. And I'm no way a theologian. I don't know my religion very well. And I think there's a sort of happy accident because, talking with the DP and talking with Kali, we were always like kind of reflecting on memories and trying to remember someone. And, she has like these hyper flashes of remembering her sister throughout the film. and it sort of creates this sort of dreamlike tone. And then something about that scene when it all comes to a head with the cinematography and the score and everything that's happening in that moment. Yeah, it's sort of weirdly, you're not the first to mention this. It sort of transcends the reality of it for a second. And I think a lot of it has to do with how Ross lit it and how we kind of staged it and how that wide shot with the light coming down. I mean, it was beautiful. So, I got to give a lot of props to him. Maybe he was thinking something like that.
Right.
I was just thinking, we don't have any time left. We gotta go. That's all I was thinking about.
and I hate to dive too much into the minutia of the filmmaking decisions that you made, but there's another scene that was really satisfying too, where there's a knife on the counter, where Bobby puts a knife on the counter, and then you flash back and the knife's gone. Mm-hmm. And it just says so much. Like, you don't even have to show where Kali is, or you just, so much by this shot of a knife, cuts to something else, and then you come back and the knife is gone. Yeah. And so where do you learn those types of techniques? Is that something they teach in school in terms of like the formula, the ingredients of a thriller, or is that just something that comes from your gut, or how does that come together?
I mean, I'm sure it's a combination of all that stuff. Watching lots of films, obviously, and learning the craft, learning how to dramatize things. But it's funny you mentioned that, because I'm very hard on the film. There's parts of the film that I can't. It's hard for me to just watch the film in general, but there's parts that I enjoy watching, parts that I don't. Because I see all the mistakes and all. But that particular sequence, for me, directorially, really kind of everything at Bobby's house. I feel I enjoy that part only because I think the actual like craft of filmmaking, the visual grammar and all that tension it's just fun to play in that sandbox as a director. Mm-hmm. And you feel the audience. We know Kali is somewhere. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's just kind of, it's almost, it can harp back to Hitchcock if you want. You know what I mean? It can be, the knife is there. There's so many different things, but sort of building those types of sequences where there's no dialogue, I just enjoy. Love that so much. I think the most, I have a legendary writing professor at NYU. His name's Mick Cassell. He's been there forever. And he said, sort of the most dramatic moments or the most engaging moments of a film are when we, the audience, know something that the character on the screen doesn't know. And that can be applied to any type of storytelling, whether it's this particular scene that you're talking about, or even like two characters that are in love, but we know one person is in love with the person and the other character doesn't know that person's, it applies to anything. But I think that's what real drama, where it really comes from as part of the cinematic experience.
Right. Another question I have pertains to the concept that this is, in my opinion, a superhero movie, except that she's more flawed than I think there's a trend with superhero episodic television like Peacemaker, which is great on HBO. Yeah. I don't know if you've seen that yet, but where they really dive deep on the flaws of the superhero to make them more relatable and funny or whatever. So here we have Kali's character's extremely flawed, but also there's no reason for her to be skilled in in what she's trying to do in this film. Yeah. So how did you balance the need to have her be this incredible protagonist / superhero where she's, it's a revenge film in a way, where she's accomplishing amazing things, but also having it be realistic because she has limitations. She's not a soldier. She's not a trained marksman. But she does have this skill set of fighting, which is helpful. But how did you straddle those lines?
Yeah, I mean, oh, man, I mean, I don't. We just got really because everything you're describing there. I think we got really lucky because there's a fine line that we were kind of walking there in terms of you don't want it to turn into John Wick or Jason Bourne or some shit like that. You know what I
Right.
mean? But also, she is a powerful, strong fighter. And I think I had an amazing stunt coordinator, Chaz Mendez, to kind of like help us. Things needed to feel primal, physical first, messy, but contained and controlled in terms of the way we were photographing it, you know what I mean? To fit sort of the style of the film.
Hmm.
And I think it just came from that. And it also came from Kali being the creative collaborator on it. And, like I said, I always wanted her input in everything. So I wasn't, a lot of it would come from like, what would you really do in this situation? You know what I mean? Like, as opposed to planning some beautifully choreographed like action fight, and so that's how we kind of towed that line. But it's interesting because that's what I don't know, that I'm very grateful for. We managed to, it's not like hyper stylized like action. And it's still grounded, but it's not like verite sort of like really super real grounded realism, you know what I mean, in a way.
Right.
Like, so and it's funny you mentioned like the superhero stuff, because in my mind that's what it goes back to, that image I saw of her in the ring sparring with the dudes. Like, I was like, this is a real life superhero.
She is.
In my
She's
mind.
amazing, and her acting
uh,
skills too are. It's like you just don't see that coming from a first time
yeah,
actor storyteller. Yeah.
yeah.
So one last question about the film itself and a particular scene, the very last frame of the film, and I'm not going to say anything about it beyond that, but the very last frame, and I mean literally the last frame, is pretty
Driver shot. Sorry.
It's pretty stunning and revealing, and powerful. So, did you audience test the movie without that last frame? Or did you, what were your thoughts with that last frame? And without spoiling the movie, of course, because I think it just really made the film special.
Well, so man, it's man, how do I do this without saying the spoilers? I mean, what I'll say is the ending. Me and Kaylee always knew what we wanted the ending to be. You know what I mean? In terms of, I'll just say keeping it real for the sake of that. And I'll be honest, it's a long process of making a film, and people who want to help you make the film, they have ideas, and you just get to a point where you're desperate and you're trying to get your film made, so maybe you'll change some things. Maybe you'll make the ending a little bit lighter. And there was that, but all I'll say is what ended up being the final thing was what Kaylee and I always wanted it to be. And it's probably more on me for making concessions and getting more voices in my head that I shouldn't have. Like, it's going to be too dark. It's going to be too this and that, and so on and so forth. But the final frame and making that, it was through the process of showing the cuts to people, all I'll say is one of my classmates, who's my really good friend, is the director Shaka King, who directed the amazing film Judas and the Black Messiah. And he watched the film, and then we called and got on the phone. This was with not our original ending, right? And so we were talking about the film, and I could tell that like the ending just wasn't really landing for him. So then I told him, well, what if it was this? And he was like, Joe, what are you doing? You got to do that. You got to do that ending. And then we did it. And then I started showing like my friends and my trusted colleagues, and it's so amazing how it just suddenly made it all click in a very, very specific way, and again, I mean, I guess that's the beauty of it. It's hard to like, you got to get the feedback, you got to get eyeballs on it, and it's painful, but through that process, always, it's just part of the process and the journey,
Right. Beautifully articulated without spoiling the end. So well done. You really thread that needle there But yeah, the way I felt with that last scene is like you're kind of in one place, and then the last scene, the last frame is up, and it kind of hits you and it kind of spins you around, and then you're back where you started, and you're going, okay, all right, it does click. It's a very clickable moment in the film, and just congratulations on such a great, a great piece of art.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Do you have time to talk about Narcos?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Narcos is one of my favorite television shows. And I saw that you directed like 5 episodes or so, 5 or 6 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard on a previous interview that you were the only gringo director of that television series. So tell me how that came about and what you had to learn to get up to speed and what you learned in the process of making that show.
Yeah. I mean, I consider it a great honor to be the only American director to work on that show. The other directors are incredible. Amat Escalante, Andy Baiz, just they were very always adamant about bringing some of the best top talent directors from Latin America, and these are like filmmakers that I really have a lot of respect for. So yeah, I mean, it basically came to be because of my first film, Manos Sucias, which was a tiny little film that I shot in Buenaventura, Colombia, and one of my Colombian producers on that film is very good friends with Andy Baiz, who's a Colombian filmmaker, Colombian director, and he was the producing director on Narcos he's been up for the whole long journey. And he's from Cali, Colombia, which is near Buenaventura. And like, I spent a long time in Colombia, like backpacking, traveling and researching, and I can speak a little Spanish. And like, we immediately got along. But before we even met, he had watched my film and really loved it. And then he showed it to Eric Newman, the showrunner of Narcos. And then I interviewed with them, and, and he told Eric to watch the film. And I think, there's some elements of the filmmaking in my first feature being in, because one thing that's really great about Narcos is, we're shooting in practical, real locations. It's sort of like one of those, you're not on a soundstage a lot, you're out in the real elements. And that's all my first film was, it was a whole crazy Heart of Darkness, crazy movie to make, but
Crash course. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I interviewed with them, and, I just talked about my experience and knowing what it's like to shoot in Colombia, because I had made a whole film there. And then before I knew it, I was on a plane going down to shoot some middle episodes of this ginormous television show. And I was just in way over my head, but I mean, at the same time, like, yeah, you learn by doing,
Mm-hmm.
So.
And they probably have a lot of people who are fixtures in that show who are like, oh, here's another director, let's get him up to speed, and this is what we need to show him. Exactly.
Yeah. And that's how it is a lot of the times, when especially if you're coming in to do middle episodes of a show, the machine is already in place, so you're sort of coming in there. But the one thing that was so special about Narcos to be my first one was it was sort of an unconventional, now having done lots of other shows, it was an unconventional show. And I really got to give a lot of credit to Eric, because he was a showrunner that really empowers the filmmakers. He's not super precious with like the script and stuff. He allows us to kind of push. And that's why he went and found all these interesting directors, because he knew that we would try to bring something more to it and bring a different like cinematic language to it and try things. And he encouraged that, which, that's not always necessarily the case in television directing. So for me, it was just, I just got really lucky with that sort of combination in the team that I was paired with, from my first AD to my DP, to my production designer. Like, they were just very patient with me and really helped me, learn. And, there was no dumb questions, So.
What did you take with you from that process, that Narcos experience, that you still have today that you use as an indie filmmaker?
I mean, again, definitely, the biggest for me, it's funny because all the filmmaking stuff, like, a crane shot, a steady cam, a drone, that's all like that's all comes easier because I studied filmmaking in a way, it really was, the biggest educational part for me was working with the actors, because at that point I had never, my first film, I had, rehearsed for 6 weeks with the main people in my film before we were shooting. And in television, you don't have that. You don't rehearse at all.
Yeah.
You don't know them. You don't really know the actors. Maybe you'll go and have a lunch with someone and talk. So, and I was lucky to work with, Pedro Pascal is like, forget about it. He's such an amazing actor. And just being able to work with him and see how he works, it was very, it was very educational. Wagner Moura, who played Pablo, was just the sweetest, most generous actor. And it was really a great, the energy and vibe of that show was really a great first soiree into television, because it was a very warm, loving sort of atmosphere, and so, but what that basically taught me is like how to work with different type of actors that work different ways, highly trained actors, and sometimes, you can overthink stuff, but really the actors come in and you work out the blocking and all this stuff, like, in the moment, and you might discover and find something better. And because of the nature of television, you have to work so quickly. You learn how to be a little bit more mobile in the moment. And so that certainly helped with Catch the Fair one, because Kali was, she wasn't a quote unquote professional actor, but, Kevin Dunn and Lisa and all of them, in the sense of like, they come before and they show up on set and we just start doing it. I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that,
So thanks for diving in on Narcos, because it's just one of my all-time personal favorite shows. And one of the reasons I love it is it's like watching, like every scene has a movie star in it. Like these are like real legit in terms of, okay, they may not be household names in America, but they are like Wagner Moura, for instance. I mean, huge international star. And I met him at Sundance a couple years ago and got a picture with him, but on a red carpet event. But the amount of star power that you had to work with, I imagine it was like being spoiled as, a new episodic television director.
Yeah. It was. And again, I was really lucky. And I was also really lucky that they were all very kind and trusting. When I first met Wagner, we were scouting and we went to go scout when they were shooting that day. Andy was shooting that day and he came up to me and gave me a big hug, and he had seen my film Manos Sucias and had all these questions, and he's a director too. So there was just immediate like, oh, it just put me at ease, because I didn't know what I was getting myself into at all. And he was just amazing to work with. I just can't tell you how amazing his instrument, the little tweaks you can do, and such a gentle, kind soul. There were, with him in particular, we just had, I don't know if it's because we're similar souls or something, but we just had a connection in a shorthand that was really wonderful. And I really, really enjoyed it. And I've always, we're still friends and stuff. And I'm always like, man, I wish we got to find something to make together, because he's such a special actor. He's
like the Christian Bale of South America. He can just pack on like 40 pounds for a role and just like, all right, let's do this thing.
Yeah. I mean, in Brazil, he's huge, he's like their biggest star. But like I said, also such a good person, a good human being,
Yeah. Well, Josef, it's been wonderful to hear your story. And I do want to ask one last question about productivity before we sign off here. The reason I'm asking this question is I looked for you online. I looked for, what your online presence is, and didn't see a lot of social media stuff. And that's probably a good thing, especially if you're trying to get shit done in this world.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is your approach to creativity and productivity as it relates to the distractions that we are faced with every single day in terms of social media, the news, and those types of things?
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, that's a great question. That's a very loaded question. I feel like we could talk about that for hours. I'll just speak for me personally. Every individual person is different, and some people thrive with social media and they really know how to use it and all that stuff. And I was on it for a while, but it really wasn't until the pandemic where, just for me personally, I was very self-aware that this was not good for me. This is not good for my soul. It doesn't bring out the best in me. And so, I just basically closed it all down, because very much what you're saying, like, rather than just kind of like sitting down and reading a book, I'll just, before you know it, I will have just stared at Instagram for an hour, or there's a real thing that I feel like social media is really causing people to not live presently, not be in the present moment. And I understand that there's positive and negatives to it as well. But just for me as a creative person, it was very paralyzing. I feel like it's very paralyzing just for me. I just need to go out and travel, and I need to watch movies in the theater, and I feel like if you get sucked into that, especially as an artist, it's just a really hard time to be an artist as well, because with Rotten Tomatoes and all this stuff, it's terrifying to put a piece of art out. In the 90s, there was maybe 15 critics that would review your film. Now you suddenly have hundreds and hundreds of people reviewing your film, and for me, I'm really sensitive, and it's really, you take stuff personally. So I know that I have to really put up a lot of boundaries for that stuff and keep the focus on the work. What is the work? And it's getting up every day and trying to write and trying to make a movie and try to keep working on the craft and watch movies and also just experience and live life,
Yeah, well, that's a great answer. And it's odd because in a way, when I ask a question like that, I kind of already know the answer, but yeah. I just don't want to accept it. I like, what I want to hear is, I'm on Twitter 2 hours a day, and it's great. I'm still able to get a bunch of shit done. But the answer is no. It's we all know it's not where you need to be if you're going to be productive and creative and be personally fulfilled. But it's nice to hear it articulate the way you did. But I wish you and Kali and your whole film crew all the best in the launch of this movie, Catch the Fair One. I'll be promoting it, and I'll send you links to your episode, and you can send it to your friends. Of course, social media. I understand where you stand on social media, but
I still got email though,
It's really, really a pleasure hearing your story, Joseph. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. And thank you so much for having me and taking the time to watch the film. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Hey, thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, I have a favor to ask. Can you go to wherever you listen to podcasts and leave me a review? Your feedback is what keeps this podcast going. You can also check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook with the handle @DreamPathPod. And as always, go find your dream path.